Hello and welcome to 98 Not Out, the cricket podcast. I'm Darren Mutu, and every week, all year round, myself and my co-host Paul Webb will bring you the latest news and discussion about the national and international cricket scene. Plus special guest interviews with cricket experts like Nasser Hussain, David Gower and David Bumble-Lloyd and many others. So let's get into this week's show. Okay, let's start with the biggest news story, if you're an England fan, that has been widely leaked all week. I saw it on various places. I think the Telegraph was the first to come with the story, but it has been confirmed by the ECB today that Ben Stokes is England's new captain. What do we think about this? It's we've talked. When his name came before, both of us were a little bit hesitant, weren't we?
Yeah, and I still am. You know, I mean, he's. Let's take everything else out of the way, right? So let's assume he's not an all-rounder. He's either a batsman or a bowler.
Yeah.
Let's assume that he hasn't had a very, very, very difficult period of time over the last 12 months or whatever, and probably more.
Yeah.
And if you can assume all of that, then yes, he's the right man for the job. You know, whether he's a batsman or a bowler, and only one of those, he's brilliant. But he's both, and he has had a tough time over a long period of time. You know, he's hugely well respected, I'd imagine. He's got serious leadership qualities, but it's a huge burden on him. Now, Rob Key presumably has faith in him, has presumably had a lot of conversations with him, and presumably the pair of them have come to the conclusion that actually it's not too much for him, in which case absolutely he's the right man for it, if only on the basis that who else?
Well, that's what that is the thing. That is the thing that, you know, unless you go completely left field, there isn't anyone else that just sort of springs to mind, really. I agree with all that. But I'll chuck something else into that equation.
Go on.
Into that cement mixer of doubt. He plays across all three formats.
Well, yeah, there is that.
He's not just a red ball player and can concentrate on that. You know, the burden on his shoulders for England is all three formats, and as you say, batting, bowling, and now captaincy. And England has got a fairly woeful record of giving the armband, figuratively speaking, to their best player.
Yeah.
You know, you can go back, Flintoff, Peterson, Botham, you know, none of those ended well.
Well, even Root.
Yeah.
You know, now Root obviously was exceptional. And played very, very well when he was captain. You know, last year it was stellar.
Yeah.
But by his own admission, the last few weeks, it has all become a little bit too much for him. So maybe he's just draining. And Joe Root does not play all formats. So, and he does not. Well, I suppose he does bowl, but he hasn't got the workload bowling that Ben Stokes would expect to have. So yeah, you know, I think it's a good appointment. We just hope that it doesn't harm Ben Stokes as an individual. You know, his mental health, his performances on the field, and therefore England's performances.
See, that's my biggest concern is, you know, he's just coming out of a very difficult 12 months in terms of mental health. He had a big rest and stepping away from the game completely. I understand that was largely due to the illness and subsequent passing of his father, which affected him a lot. But are we asking too much of someone that's only very, very recently come out of quite a traumatic period to give him arguably the most stressful job in English sport? I was thinking this afternoon, who cops more flack from media, public, etc., than an England Test cricket captain?
When things aren't going well.
I can only think of the England football manager, but that is kind of once every 4 years when we miserably exit the Euros or the World Cup or something.
Inevitably.
Yeah, but, you know, with cricket, you call the toss wrong and the world's on your back, let alone a team losing a match or, you know, you performing badly.
Well, we all remember, whether you are old enough or you've just seen it on the telly or extracts, the greeting that Ian Botham got at Lords when he walked back after a very, very brief innings.
King pair.
Yeah. You know, and obviously we hope that doesn't happen to Ben Stokes. Now, you can argue that, you know, let's work backwards. So Joe Root took over from Alistair Cook. Alistair Cook took over from Andrew Strauss.
Yep.
Strauss took over from
NASA.
NASA took over from Athers.
No, Alex Stewart.
Alex Stewart, and then probably Stewart and Athers. So, but they've all... But I'm kind of losing my track a little bit, but my point here is they've all taken over from relatively strong positions. You know, England are at the moment about as rock bottom in terms of Test match results as they can possibly be. So you could argue, well, look, the only way is up. You know, you're starting from a pretty low position. All you got to do is win a few Test matches, and suddenly you get some momentum, and you get people supporting you and covering you rather than throwing stones at you.
Yes.
But
I think the eggshells that Ben Stokes has got to walk across are many because of all of the things that we've just said about them batting and bowling, 3 formats. The weight on his shoulders of performance is, I think, quite frightening. And I also think that, you know, how soon does it give? How soon before people start saying, hang on a second, you know, does he need to get out for a duck? Does he need to get tonked round the park and not take any wickets? Listener Chris Kavanagh has a message. He's responded to it. We put this on Facebook earlier on today, and Chris, and we love it when people get involved. Chris said, I'm a little worried about his mental health, but hopefully he will be well supported in his role. Good luck, old boy. Now that's quite a good point Chris raises there about the support network he's going to have around him. And you said that Rob Key would have spoken to everyone, probably in the senior England players and probably Ben's family, to just make sure that this was the right thing. The other story today to come out of this appointment is the fact that Stokes wants Anderson and Broad to return. So I'm just thinking about who are the wise heads in that England setup. And I'll take those two out of this equation for the moment. But who beyond Broad and Anderson do you think are, given that this squad is in transition, it's a toughie, isn't it?
In many respects, it's tough to name a settled 11 in the first instance. You know, and we've had this debate a few times about who would your opening pair be, who's 3, who's 4. You know, we know Joe Root doesn't want to bat 3, but sometimes when he's batted 4, he's effectively batted 3.
Well, it doesn't matter because we're 30 for 3 every time anyway.
Yeah. You know, the likes of Ben Stokes are just coming back. The likes of Chris Wokes aren't regulars. You know, Saki Mahmood obviously is too young. Moeen Ali is retired, or at least
Sam Billings was
retired.
chucked in the mix, wasn't he?
Billings was thrown in, but I don't think he's got enough pedigree at the moment. Tom Abel was thrown in there as well. But in terms of old heads, there's not a lot, really. You know, I mean, I think I said, well, obviously we've got people like Johnny Bairstow. Joss Butler, I suspect, won't play much Tests now. I think he'll concentrate on the shorter stuff, which he's clearly exceptionally good at. You know, maybe, I don't know, maybe is Moeen one that can be talked back? Who knows? But otherwise, you know, if we do throw Anderson and Broad back in, then one assumes that Ben Stokes will lean on them and Joe Root, and that's pretty much it.
And also, it's kind of back to the future, isn't it? Because what we've been talking about since last summer is how to reset this Test side, how to bring the new players on, how to introduce new faces. And what we seem to be doing, you know, it was a brave shout. I mean, okay, you could argue it didn't work, but it was a brave shout to leave those two out of the West Indies tour. And, you know, we said at the time, maybe not enough support was given to people like Saki Mahmood and other people that were being entered into the mix. The Yorkshire, was it Matt Fisher, the Yorkshire lad?
Yeah, who's now broken down with injury.
Yeah, I know.
But whether it's support or not, I mean, I honestly think, and we said this at the time, that it was again. It's another thing for the ECB that were handled really badly.
Yeah.
You know, there's a way to do the whole thing. You say to Jimmy and Stuart Broad, you say, right, look, lads, we're going to give you a rest. You've had a tough year last year, you know, touring all over the world. We're going to give you a rest just for this series. You know, hope you understand and, you know, hope you agree. And then you message it as a positive, because otherwise, straight away, there's all this uproar about Anderson and Broad not being picked, and what are we doing, you know, effectively, by association, taking a substandard team. So we're not taking our best two bowlers, therefore everyone else obviously isn't as good as them. So we're taking a substandard team. We said on this show before, what message does that give to the likes of Mahmood and Robinson and Fisher? You know, it basically says, look, you're only here for a little while, you know, you're not the best. And who knows, maybe that affected their performances in the West Indies.
Yeah, and it does. And, you know, if you're in a spotlight and if you are, you know, literally throwing the ball, all those voices in your head saying about how you've got to perform, and you're going to push yourself way too hard.
Yeah.
Rather than being told, right, you're going to be given a run in the side, you're going to be given 6 test matches, you're going to be given 2 series.
Yeah, you're here on merit,
Yeah.
not just because we've left the 2 best bowlers at home. You're here on merit.
Yeah. But also, you know, we talk a lot about bowlers. We are talking a lot about bowlers. But to me, bowling isn't the problem.
No.
It's the batting.
Yeah.
Okay, bring Broad and Anderson back. Remember when Broad was being sort of criticised in the Ashes? You know, he was quite feisty and said, well, if the batters aren't giving us anything to defend, what chance have we got?
Yeah, how can we bowl if we've only got 140 on the board?
Yeah, that's right. So we go back to the top order, and looking at how people have been performing in the county championship so far, and we've had 3 rounds completed. It's difficult to, when you're looking at the England players, and we did this last week, we sort of analysed who was who, and it was difficult to pick out anyone that was absolutely outstanding, that's already kind of in the so-called radar.
Yeah, well, Rory Burns has failed again today.
Yeah, that's right. Zach Crawley, you know, we question whether he's at the top there. Ben Stokes, I think we're pretty happy that he's going to be given the gloves going forward.
He's got to be. Well, I mean, on the basis that Joss Buttler, as we just said, is highly unlikely to play Test cricket. Folks is, I mean, even if Buttler is there, Folks is still your best keeper.
Yeah.
But, you know, Folks is your keeper. If Johnny Bairstow plays, then great, but he's not your keeper.
No.
Decent standing keeper, don't get me wrong, but you pick your best keeper. And
So do we have Johnny Bairstow? I'm thinking back to this sort of the top order of the batting. So, I mean, do we have Johnny Bairstow going in there at 3? Do we have Joe Root at 4? Is that...
Yeah, why not? Why not? I mean, one of the things that I think Johnny Bairstow has struggled with in the past is coming on and starting his innings against spin. There's a lot of times actually, when he's been bowled through the gate by spinners very, very early on. Okay, you kind of take that out of the equation. Right, go in early then. Because it's going to be early.
Yeah, that's
I mean,
right.
you know, it would be wonderful if Johnny Bairstow went in at 3 and we're 300 for 1 and then the spinners are on. But it's not going to happen.
No, it's not 2010-11, is it?
No.
God, they were the days, weren't they? They were the days, that Ashes tour, when we were 300 for 1 quite regularly with that top order of Strauss, Cook and Peterson, Trott, Bell.
Yeah.
Happy days.
Interestingly, though, so as part of the all the interviews and everything that Rob Key has been doing today, one of the things that stood out for me is that he said, we want to pick the best team we can. We're not going to overthink selection. Absolutely right. Back to basics. Just pick your best 11.
Well, yeah, and you know what's interesting, given that Rob Key's just sort of come out of the Sky commentary box, is that the amount of debate that goes on about England selection from TV commentators, from writers, journalists, and there does tend to be such a sort of variance of opinion and who should be doing what, who should be playing. But yeah, I think you're right. You know, just try and drown out all the noise, and just like you say, pick the best team. Now, as you said, he was speaking for the first time after being appointed England's director of men's cricket earlier this month. But this is what is still slightly concerning. And we talk about the support network. We talk about basically the bigger picture of team management, because, gone are the old days where there was a coach and a captain and that was it, and the coach was on the corner smoking a pipe and pointing fingers around, and the captain was getting on with it. But England remain without a head coach following Chris Silverwood's sacking after the Ashes. Now, Key wants to appoint split coaches. I think this is sensible. Yeah. Split coaches for Test and white ball cricket. Now, in the running, former South African batter Gary Kirsten and ex-Australian batsman, batter, can't say batsman anymore, Simon Cattage are amongst those. And I think, where is it with Justin Langer? Isn't he sort of making more friendly noises that he'd be interested?
I think so. I mean, I think both Langer and Ponting have been touted, haven't they, as potentials.
Dream team.
Well, I mean, whether it'd be one or the other, I suspect, rather than the pair. But
must be difficult if you're an Aussie. I mean, what happens when the Test match comes around, when the Ashes series comes around? If you're Langer or Ponting?
I can't see Ricky Ponting winning. Surely not.
Oh, dearie me. Well, let's see. Interviews are due to take place early next month. God, they're leaving this late.
Yeah.
And Key has said he is optimistic that the Test coach will be in place by the first Test of the summer, which begins on, he said June the 2nd. If you think, June the 2nd, it's May on Monday.
Yeah. It's only about 5 weeks.
Yeah, June the 2nd is not far off at all. And then the evenings start getting darker, by the way.
3 weeks late after that.
3 weeks.
Don't wish
there's the English summer for you. 3 weeks of it. But yes, the first Test begins on the 2nd of June against New Zealand. And now Rob Key said there are some good names coming in from English cricket and from world cricket. I'm trying to find out about the ones I might not know so much about. Key also said he plans to re-establish the national selector role, which was scrapped under his predecessor, Ashley Giles, although he said it's not clear yet who will fill the position. That probably makes more sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I think we talked about this before, about having like a Ted Dexter type figure or a Mickey Stewart type figure who was basically overseeing everything and a steady hand on the tiller, because you absolutely need that. Tell us what you think. Get in touch. Email, social media, all the rest of it. Thanks for listening to 98 Not Out, the cricket podcast. Please subscribe to the show in your podcast app to make sure you see the new episode each week as it appears in your feed. And if you enjoy the show, we'd really appreciate it if you could leave us a 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts to help us introduce the show to even more people. Thank you so much, and we'll catch you on the next episode.